undertake a root and branch review of its research and development activity, laying out its objectives for the future. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the BBC needs a fair, accountable and sustainable funding system that is fit for the future. There is no perfect model for the funding of the BBC, but given the stability it provides and the lack of clear public support for any alternative model, the licence fee remains the most appropriate funding model for the next charter period. The licence fee has been frozen at £145.50 since 2010. We will end this freeze and will increase the licence fee in line with inflation to 2021-22, at which point there will be a new settlement. In line with the other reforms to funding announced last July, this means that the BBC will have a flat cash settlement to 2021-22. This gives the BBC the certainty and the funding levels it needs to deliver its updated mission and purpose, and it will ensure that the BBC will remain one of the best funded public service broadcasters in the world, receiving more than £18 billion from 2017-18 to 2021-22. Future funding settlements will be made using a new regularised process every 5 years, giving the BBC greater independence from government. The licence fee concession for over 75s will be protected during this Parliament, although voluntary payments will be allowed. We will give the BBC more freedom to manage its budgets. Protected funding of £150 million a year for broadband and £5 million a year for local television will be phased out. The World Service will be an exception to this, given its enormously important role. Mr. Speaker, the current licence fee system needs to be fairer, so we will close the iPlayer loophole, meaning that those who watch BBC programmes on demand will now need a TV licence like everyone else. There will be pilots of a more flexible payment system to benefit those on lower incomes and make it fairer to everyone. At the moment, people have to pay for the first year in only 6 months, meaning six much higher monthly payments. And we will take forward many of the recommendations from David Perry QC's review to make the process of investigating and prosecuting licence fee evasion more effective and fair. Although the licence fee remains the best way of funding the BBC for this charter period, it is likely to become less sustainable as the media landscape continues to evolve. The government therefore welcomes the BBC's intention to explore whether additional revenue could be raised at home and abroad from additional subscription services sitting alongside the core universal fee. The government is clear that any new subscription offer would be for additional services beyond what the BBC already offers. It will be for the BBC to set the scope of these plans, but we expect it to review progress and success in order to feed into the next charter review process. We would also like to see BBC content become portable so that licensee payers have access when travelling abroad. Mr. Speaker, the BBC is and must always remain at the very heart of British life. We want the BBC to thrive, to make fantastic programmes for audiences and to act as an engine for growth and creativity. Our reforms give the BBC much greater independence from government in editorial matters, in its governance, in setting budgets and through a longer charter period. They secure the funding of the BBC and will help it develop new funding models for the future. At the same time, these reforms will assist the BBC to fulfil its own stated desire to become more distinctive and to better reflect the diverse nature of its audience. They place the BBC at the heart of the creative industries as a partner of the local and commercial sectors, not a rival. The BBC will operate in a more robust and more clearly defined governance and regulatory framework, and it will be more transparent and accountable to the public it serves and who rely on the BBC to be the very best it can possibly be, so that it can inform, educate and entertain for many years to come. I commend this statement to the House.
Rear Eagle.